Hey, welcome to the Mothership Explorers. I'm Lauren. We have Katie from Down the Rabbit Hole at Bedtime tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Katie. I can't wait to see what we've got here, I think.
Yes. Thank you so much for allowing me to come back on your podcast and to bring a tale of motherhood that is really rocking my world and rocking the world of many YouTubers, because Ruby Franke and the channel 8 Passengers was a big part of YouTube for quite a long time. And we're here tonight to talk all about Ruby Franke, her husband Kevin, and a very explosive interview which was recently released to the public regarding all of the abuse that was taking place involving Ruby and Kevin's children.
Right. I heard Kevin's first interview with the police, and he sounded pretty hush-hush, but this one is like a 180. What do you think happened?
Right. Well, I was really grateful to you because you're the one who sent me this second interview and I hadn't heard it. I think there are a lot of people out there who haven't been exposed to the second interview, because I agree. The first interview with Kevin is kind of like he's keeping his mouth shut. He seems rather supportive of Ruby and kind of acting like, I don't know what the big deal is. By the second interview, which we're going to listen to here now tonight, a lot of that has changed. I'm not sure exactly what happened. You kind of gave me a theory that maybe he had seen his children in between the two interviews. Do you still think that might have been the case?
I really have no idea. I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I can't figure it out because he really went from I love my wife, my wife, my wife, and not really even inquiring about his children, to suddenly divulging all this information that's really quite out there.
Right.
And still not mentioning his children, though.
Yeah, I agree. And my theory about all of it, after listening to the entirety of the second interview, is that Kevin started putting the pieces together when it comes to their financial situation. I really believe that this has a lot more to do with the fact that Kevin realized he needed to save the business, okay? He seems to be very minded towards things, having a house, being able to pay for the private schools. They talk about that at some point in time. Having the money that they need from their many business ventures and from his job as well. So after listening to both interviews, I'm just speculating that this was more about Kevin being able to hang on to all of that money.
That's really pathetic and sad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else I can say about that. I mean, he did not respond as I would expect a loving father to respond to any of this from what I've seen or heard.
Totally agreed. Now, as we go into this second interview, I want to let you know that throughout this interview, Kevin brings up a couple named the Hannas. Had you heard about this couple before this second interview?
No, I hadn't. Had you?
No. And several people came to my channel asking about it. I did some research and I shared some information on my latest video about the Hannas. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick synopsis here. The Hannas are another Mormon couple who were very close to Ruby. They were good friends, spending a lot of time together, and the Hannas are the ones who brought Ruby and Kevin into connection. They were close with Jodi Hildebrant before Ruby and Kevin ever even got to know her. So they're kind of like a missing piece of the puzzle. A husband and wife couple with, I think it's like 9 or 10 kids, who are also Mormon, who participated in this connections therapy. They were close with Jodi, ended up separating from her and creating their own therapy kind of institution or cult, some may call it. I'll share a picture of them on screen. And I just received information from a source saying that behind the scenes, this couple, and this is all allegedly just from the source who claims to know them, is in the process of now getting a divorce. So the Hannas were this couple who were seeing Jodi. They were involved in connections. They were telling Ruby and Kevin that their marriage was just stellar because of Jodi's advice, and they brought them into the group. And we're going to hear Kevin talk about them extensively throughout the interview.
Is there any couple who hasn't separated after being in Jodi's care?
Of course. I mean, at this point, I would be shocked to meet one. So, okay. So let's delve in a little bit to the first snippet I want to share with you from the interview. We're going to listen in, and then Laura and I have a lot to say about what's going on here.
Over 20 years of marriage, asking for sex as a husband frequently, or asking her to wear lingerie or things like that, how that made her feel. And it was really emotional, and it touched me. Like, I didn't realize that she felt so strongly about that she felt so hurt by that.
So this first snippet from the interview that I wanted to share with you, Laura, it's about Kevin divulging to the police that the reason he got involved in the connections therapy group with Ruby is because Ruby had a lot of concerns about Kevin's sexuality. She felt that their relationship with one another was not a good relationship, and that maybe it was even sinful because Kevin was so lustful towards her. I don't know if you're aware, but it's very prevalent in the 8 Passengers Reddit group for people to talk about how Ruby constantly throughout her YouTube channel and the many videos that she makes, she kind of indicates that Kevin is way too into sex. It's just too much for her. If he does the dishes, then she'll give him sex. There's a lot of back and forth, almost seeming like she pays for things that she wants from him by offering some kind of sexual relationship between the two of them. And it's been a long-standing topic in the Reddit group. And here in the very beginning of Kevin explaining why they got involved in connections, he's letting us know that it had everything to do with sex.
Sex gets the dishes done?
Apparently in this relationship.
I didn't know that.
I think I tried that in the beginning, and now it's just not enough of a payment for those dishes anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
I know you're speechless.
Wow.
Yes.
I am.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the thing that's really interesting about this for me is that it essentially seems to confirm a lot of the concerns that fans and haters had about the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, that there was something going on in the background, and we don't know everything about it. I'm not professing to know for sure everything that's going on here. I can only listen to what Kevin has to say and then kind of speculate a little bit around what he's saying based on other evidence that we have, right? And so here he is essentially telling the police, we got involved with these people because my wife was concerned about the amount of sex that I wanted. He says something to the effect of, I wanted her to wear lingerie and stuff like that, in quotations. Now, I have a lot of questions about what the stuff like that is. He's very vague. And when I listened to this interview, although he's presenting all kinds of information, he's spewing out information about Ruby and Jodi, personal and private information, I felt like he was definitely holding back and protecting his own secrets. That was just the feeling that I got from it.
Well, I have 2 thoughts. One, I'm wondering if Jodi influenced Ruby to think that Kevin had a problem, because that's her MO.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I'm thinking is maybe that's one of the reasons why Kevin was so freaked out when his daughter went into the house to collect things.
Yes.
Maybe he was afraid that she found his special closet.
Yep. And if you're not aware, Kevin actually asked the police about arresting his eldest daughter, Sherry, for trying to come into the home after all of this happened and maybe get some clothes for the younger kids. He literally was so concerned that Sherry might have obtained something. I don't know if it's money. We have no idea what it is, that he was willing to go to law enforcement about her, which is, it definitely sounds quite suspicious. So for me, this interview was shocking, Laura. I'm so glad that you ended up sending it to me because it's a lot of information to go through. They released a lot of photographs, audio, video, body cam. It's a lot to go through, and many channels are showing all the different pieces. But to me, this interview specifically really gets to the crux of what I wanted to know about. Like, how did this happen? How did this family implode and become like this? Okay. And what I think I'm hearing is that Kevin had a certain idea of how the relationship should be. He had a certain idea of what he wanted. It sounds like a lot of it was sexual, and that Ruby was struggling with that. And it may have gotten even worse as she moved into this relationship with Jodi.
Oh, that sounds reasonable.
Asking her to wear lingerie or things like that, how that made her feel. And it was really emotional, and it touched me. Like, I didn't realize that she felt so strongly about that, that she felt so hurt by that.
So I do find it quite interesting that Kevin is expressing some concern for Ruby here. I mean, he says, like, in this interview, he says to the police, I was not interested in this quote unquote cult. I kind of saw it as like man bashing. But once Ruby and I sat down and spoke to each other face to face, and she expressed that I made her feel, he doesn't say this, but it sounds like Ruby is saying that he made her feel quote unquote dirty, kind of like that she felt that the lust and the sin just was something that was taking away from the spirituality of their relationship. That's kind of reading between the lines, and that he really did feel a sense of wanting to connect better with her and have a better relationship. So I do have to give some credit there that he's presenting it as though at first he would not have been interested in what Jodi had to say. However, once Ruby expressed her deep desire to continue on with this therapy, he agreed to do it. Now, that could be also a way of lowering his own involvement, or kind of doing his best to seem as though he was really pulled into this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking this couple seems like they could have been really amazing together if they didn't have kids.
That is a very interesting point, Laura. And because we are doing a podcast about motherhood, this is like the kind of difficult story we want to examine and be aware that there are situations in which people may really struggle, not only with just having children, but 6 children, right, Laura?
6.
Like,
Yeah,
they had older kids who they had already parented and raised.
Right.
And it's interesting that it's only the very youngest who were placed in the most strictly abusive situation with Jodi. It's almost like they had grown out of their parenting phase. They were done. They had parented Sherry and Chad, the older kids, and it was finished.
Right. And also with the younger kids, she was doing YouTube. So she was using them as props. And, this strict parenting got her attention.
Right.
So I kind of felt like she just wanted to keep taking it to the next level, just to keep that interest going, the momentum going.
Right. And we're going to hear more about that as we get further into the interview.
And so I committed that I would really give it a go. And I stayed in the men's group, And so, in that men's group, I met with Jodi every week, with the other men that were in the group.
So here we hear from Kevin about what this counseling was really like. Connections was actually like a series of groups that these people would attend. And then they would also meet with Jodi one-on-one and as a couple, and they were paying for all of it. So it was a huge moneymaker. Some people are saying that it was a cult-like group, but I found it really interesting that Kevin speaks here, and we'll hear a little bit more about it. Kevin calls these groups kind of like addiction counseling, which was interesting. So it was kind of brought to Kevin and served on a platter to these men as like, this is an addiction counseling type of class. If you're wondering what kind of addiction, Kevin goes on to say that these are men with sexual addiction, which just really kind of perked my ears up, Laura, because it's sort of like, once again, I think they're saying, without fully saying, Ruby thought I had a sex addiction. Ruby thought I had a porn addiction. This is something that we had been dealing with. This is like the speculation that I have based upon what I saw on the YouTube channel, what's available on Reddit, and now what he's coming out and saying. He was willing to attend this group that was based on addictions, and he says it was about sexual addiction.
I think he was in the very beginnings of doing whatever Ruby wanted to keep his relationship alive with her when he started this group.
I think that at this point in time, Ruby was the main breadwinner. And I believe that was likely her control over Kevin. I have personally not gotten the feeling that Kevin is so in love with Ruby. And that's based upon the old videos that we saw on the 8 Passengers YouTube channel. He seemed like someone who was just kind of going along with this for seemingly the money, the fame.
Maybe somebody more in love with money.
Right. I think he also showed a lot of ego. Once again, my personal opinion, I would love to hear what our subscribers have to say. Many of you maybe have watched this couple more extensively than either one of us, but I did see some of the old 8 Passenger stuff, and I remember thinking, this guy is really full of himself. He's not available a lot. He's out of the house a lot. He's not super involved with the kids, but he does show up and do some of the filming. So my thought process would be that Kevin was interested in Ruby for all this fame and money. And that he also, wanted to have a regular sexual relationship with his wife, maybe more than what most of us would be willing to do. I have to say, I'm really at a standstill in my love life. So I would have, there are times that women go through periods of times when they're struggling, maybe in other areas of their life. And so it's hard for them in the bedroom as well. And Ruby had 6 kids.
Tired.
Yeah, she's exhausted, I'm sure. So I can see someone saying from this interview, Kevin sounds like he really cared about Ruby. But I'm kind of looking at it through the lens of what I've seen before. And I'm really questioning how much of this is him protecting himself and presenting a certain narrative to the police and to us. Because he's got to get the kids because he's got to get the money. And so it really needs to look like this is a Ruby thing and that his involvement was somewhat minimal and he was kind of pulled into it. He always thought it was weird. He kind of went along with it, but it was for the good of the family. That's the sense that I get from what he's had to say so far.
Because our marriage felt like it was getting better and stronger. So this was now, summer and fall of 2020, and in addition to that, there was the whole YouTube cancel thing. I don't know how much you guys are.
Okay, so this is the first time I really wanted to bring this to you, Laura. This is the first time that we hear from Kevin and Ruby that the canceling of the YouTube channel was a big deal for them and that it was canceled, because what they've been saying in the past, Laura, is that they chose to end their YouTube channel because they wanted to protect their children. And here we have Kevin in this interview admitting, like, we really lost our channel. We lost everything. So what do you think about that kind of just juxtaposition of what they've been telling the public all along, but he's bringing out some truth in this interview.
Right. He mentioned that it was Chad, the whole beanbag incident, that made people go wild, saying, "What's wrong with you? You don't do that." And I would imagine there's some truth in that, but maybe it's also been used as an excuse.
Hmm.
I think Jodi had a lot to do with it in the long run. I think this is all Jodi.
Yeah. And let me play a little bit more. We're going to hear Chad talk about how they went from plenty of money to nothing.